So Hugh Jackman, Wolverine himself decided to strap on a bow, grow out the scruff, and play Robin Hood.
Would you like to know a secret?
But not the fun. Steal from the rich, give to the poor Robin Hood you grew up with. No. This Robin Hood kills people because he genuinely enjoys it. Directed by Michael Sarnoski, The Death of Robin Hood takes the legendary outlaw, beats the absolute crap out of him, parks him in a monastery to think about what he's done, and then kind of just sits there. Today we're breaking down why this movie is half masterpiece, half snooze fest, and whether half chef's kiss. Sarnoski opens with Robin Hood, not as some dashing hero, but as a beaten down, broken man who's been running for so long he's forgotten what he's even running from. And Jackman? This dude sells it. Every limp, every grunt, every dead-eyed stare. You believe this guy has been through absolute hell. The violence here isn't stylish. It's not cool. It's ugly, raw, and uncomfortable. And that's the point. When Robin Hood kills someone in this movie, you don't cheer. You squirm. Sarnoski makes death feel heavy, like it actually costs something. Which, life like a points system? That's a breath of fresh air. So Robin Hood gets dragged into this monastery, right? And for a hot minute, this movie is cooking. You've got this slow burn tension. A killer hiding among monks who literally worship peace. That's cinema, baby. That's conflict. Every scene in the monastery feels like a pressure cooker. You're waiting for the moment Robin Hood snaps, or doesn't. And that uncertainty? That's what keeps you glued to the screen. The supporting cast does their thing too. The monks aren't just set dressing. They're real characters with real faith, and their quiet horror at harboring a man like Robin Hood? You feel it. Sarnoski shoots this whole section like a horror movie disguised as a period drama. Shadows everywhere. Silence that screams. It's genuinely impressive stuff. But 10. Then we hit the second half. And folks, this is where the movie that's more interesting to talk about than it is to watch. The first half? Legitimately great. Gritty, intense, emotionally charged. Jackman delivers one of the most physically committed performances of his career. If the whole movie had been that, we'd be talking awards season. But the second half? It coasts. It meanders. And worst of all, it doesn't land. The movie promises you a reckoning and hands you a shrug. Final verdict? Watch the first half. Seriously. When Robin Hood gets to the monastery and you feel that tension building, satisfying than what Sarnoski actually gives you. Because we need to talk about Hugh Jackman here for a second. This man went from singing and dancing in The Greatest Showman to limping through mud, covered in blood, looking like he hasn't slept since 2019. And honestly, this might be one of the most underrated performances of his career. I'm not joking. Everyone talks about Wolverine when they talk about Jackman. And yeah, the guy eyes Wolverine, we get it. But what he does in this movie is different. There's no claws, no healing factor, no cool one-liners. It's just a man. A broken, exhausted, morally bankrupt man who's starting to realize that everything he told himself about being a hero was garbage.
There's this look Jackman does, and if you've seen the movie, you know the look I'm talking about, where he's sitting in the monastery and one of the monks asks him about his past, and Jackman doesn't say a word, he just stares. And in that stare, you see everything. The regret, the confusion, the slow, horrifying realization that he might not be the good guy in his own story. That is acting, folks. That's not CGI, that's not a stunt double. That's a guy who's been in this business for 30 years, using nothing but his face to tell you an entire backstory. Okay, let's address the elephant in the room. This movie is brutal. Not John Wick brutal. Not that slick, choreographed, isn't this cool kind of violence. This is ugly violence. Messy violence. The kind where someone without breaking a sweat become the default. Sarnoski is doing something genuinely radical here. He's making violence feel like violence again. And in the first half, that commitment pays off big time.
Now let me zoom in on the monastery because this is where the movie is at its absolute best. And I don't think people are talking about this enough. The monastery isn't just a setting, it's a character. It has its own rules, its own rhythm, its own moral code. And dropping a guy like Robin Hood, a man who has lived by the sword, taken lives without hesitation, and built his entire identity around being the toughest guy in the room, into a place of silence and prayer. That's not just good writing, that's theatrical writing. This is Greek tragedy level stuff. Every scene inside those walls has this incredible dual tension. On one hand, you've got Robin Hood, who's like a caged animal. You can see the violence simmering under the surface. You're waiting for him to explode. On the other hand, you've got these monks who are genuinely good people who took an oath of peace and who are now housing a man that everything in their belief system tells them they should reject. And Sarnoski shoots this beautifully, the way he uses natural light, those candles, those narrow windows cutting beams across dark stone walls. It creates this permanent twilight. You never feel fully comfortable. You never feel safe. Even when nothing is happening, the visual language of the movie is telling you that horror doesn't need monsters, it just needs tension. Here's a question I kept asking myself during this movie. Why Robin Hood? Like, of all the legendary figures you could deconstruct, why this one? And I think the answer is actually pretty interesting. Robin Hood is the ultimate good guy with a sword in Western folklore. He steals from the rich, gives to the poor, fights for justice. He's basically medieval Batman. Everyone loves Robin Hood. He's been played by Errol Flynn, Kevin Costner, Russell Crowe. Disney made him a fox. For crying out loud. The guy is bulletproof in pop culture. So when Sarnoski comes along and says, what if Robin Hood wasn't a hero? What if he was just a killer? What if the steal from the rich thing was just an excuse?
Make them miserable and call it art. We saw it with Joker. We saw it with the Batman. We're seeing it everywhere now. And look, sometimes that works. Joker worked. The Batman worked. Those movies earned their darkness because they paid it off. They took you somewhere. They had something to say. But the death of Robin Hood falls into the trap that a lot of these movies fall into. It mistakes being dark for being deep. It thinks that if the lighting is dim and the characters are sad and the violence is ugly, that automatically means it's saying something profound. But darkness without insight isn't depth. It's just darkness. It's a mood. And a mood can only carry you so far before you need the movie to actually open its mouth and tell you what it's about. Alright, time to put a number on this thing. The Death of Robin Hood. First half, 8 out of 10. Legitimately gripping, visually stunning, features one of Hugh Jackman's best performances, and does something genuinely original with a character who's been done to death, pun absolutely intended. Second half, 4 out of 10. Beautifully shot, sure, but beautiful shots don't mean anything if the story has nothing to say and no momentum to say it with. Overall, 6 out of 10. A movie that's more fascinating as a concept than as an experience. Worth watching for the first half alone. Jackman's performance, Sarnoski's atmosphere, the monastery sequences, but don't expect the movie to stick the landing, because it doesn't even attempt the landing. It just lands. Like a plane that ran out of fuel and gently coasted to a stop on the runway. Nobody's hurt, but nobody's clapping either. And that's the tea, folks. The Death of Robin Hood, a movie that had all the ingredients for a masterpiece and decided to leave half of them in the fridge. If you want to see Hugh Jackman absolutely commit to a role, though, watch it. For the first half, at least. Then go watch something with an actual ending. If you liked this breakdown, or if you're mad because you loved this movie and I just hurt your feelings, drop a comment. I read all of them, even the angry ones. Especially peace.